Hey guys, and welcome to episode 5 of the Tech Lane. So today we're going to be talking about VR, virtual reality. It's going to be the first part of a 3-part little series we have going on. So today's topic is virtual reality. Where did it come from, or the beginning, or whatever you want to call it. Basically, the past. So,
in essence, what VR started out of, what it sort of evolved towards, and how it was evolving throughout the 80s and 90s, primarily in the video game sort of sector.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where most of our information comes from. It's here at the Tech Lane, sometimes we try to take a forte on gaming, try to take a forte on tech. So this one is more or less the history of VR inside of the gaming world so far.
Yeah. So, I'm going to start out by saying, I mean, again, I know it's not exactly VR, but technically it's some type of augmented reality. We're talking about the Nintendo light guns. The Sega Master System had one as well. I mean, the light guns worked by photodiode, right? So,
and they would actually flash the whole screen black, except for the little birds, because mainly we're thinking about Duck Hunt. I mean, it's the little birds were the only thing that actually shot light out to you, and it would correlate that with the gun and be like, oh, you've shot something.
Hence why it's called a light gun. I mean, those started out. I mean, even I would even go as far as to say, Rob the Robot from Nintendo. That I believe it came with the original NES.
Yeah.
That was, I mean, a type of some kind of virtual reality or robot or.
Well, I mean,
it wasn't a virtual reality because it interacted with certain games and it made your current reality virtual. So.
Well, the whole tricky thing about VR and its whole aspect is a virtual reality, just like a main reality that we live today, is comprised of hundreds, if not hundreds of thousands of variables that all come together to create an experience. And our technology at the time has been always trying to keep up with the experiences of our sensations. And nowadays, yes, it's sort of starting to actually get up there, but back in the day, virtual reality could have been like at the start, it was 3D murals in the 1800s. That's how it starts off. It's creating a virtual something that's not there, and making you experience something that's not there.
Exactly. So, I mean, when it comes to the past, I mean, I'm just going to talk about personal experiences with VR. I remember going to like the local amusement park here in Toronto, Ontario, which would be Canada's Wonderland, which at the time was called Paramount Canada's Paramount Wonderland, or something with Paramount. Or
very
something.
Similar to a Six Flags type of theme park.
Or Universal, well, more like a Universal Studios here for Canada anyways. Yeah. So back in the day, they used to have VR. You used to be able to pay $10 and go play for 5 minutes. And I remember it was very basic. I mean, I even remember going on the boardwalk in New Jersey, and when I was a kid, and they had all these things you stepped into. They had like these weird boxing glove thing, like look-alike things that you put on your hands, and they had the VR that you put on your head, and
you were boxing.
Not really boxing. I mean, you were able to run through this dungeon with a dragon attacking you and stuff. Cool. I mean, it was pretty basic though. You couldn't really move your hands with no opposable fingers, or you couldn't really do much with it. I mean, other than move it like this. If you looked down, you were able to do this. That was pretty much it.
I still remember my first experiences with it inside of that setting of a theme park. It was those rides that you would wait half an hour, 45 minutes to get on. And it's a small theater. The seats move. They have the 3D glasses.
Oh, like the 4D.
Yeah, the 4D kind of stuff. And I mean,
they actually have that now in movie theaters. It's called Box or D-Box.
No, I know.
D-Box,
some. It's actually a lot more mainstream now for certain things.
Which is hilarious.
I know. But I always felt it fell short. I mean, I loved it when I was a kid, but I was never fooled into believing the reality. And I mean, it was never exactly what I wanted from virtual reality, although it was pretty decent, because I still remember trying to squish that dragonfly that came out right in front of me.
Yeah, I mean, it was really cool the way it was set up. The thing I found is that VR back in the day was more so a proof of concept than it was an actual working concept.
Well,
you know what I mean? It was more like, look, we have the technology to do something cool with this. However, I mean, we were talking about this earlier, that there was the earliest form of VR had to hang from the ceiling. It was so heavy that a normal human being could not actually put it on top of them.
By the developers, it was actually called the Sword of Damascus. due to its sheer size and weight. It was the first actual conceptualized headset 3D virtual world which you could walk around. I mean, this was eventually evolved into scenarios like in MIT in the late 70s or the 80s where they would digitize actual landscapes. You know, whether it's, I think one is Aspen, Colorado that they did. And you could walk around in the summer, in the winter, and then in a 3D binomial view. And I mean, at that time, that was revolutionary.
What year was this?
This was the start of the 80s,
So it probably looked like shit, but I mean, at the time, people were like, whoa!
Well, you got to also realize, by the end of the 80s, we already had Virtual Boy almost, available to go out.
Well, Virtual Boy, I actually received one. I think it was in the Christmas of 1992 or 1993. I can't remember. It was the actual Christmas it came out.
Yeah.
I believe it was 92.
Yeah.
Or 94, one of them. And I was like, oh my God, this is so fucking cool. Until I realized that when I put my eyes in it and played for like an hour, and I would, come out, my eyes were like red as fuck.
Yep.
And they hurt because it really wasn't VR. There was no gyroscope, no...
It was the closest thing
axis, if you want to call it, I guess.
To a simulated reality, and the fact that you would actually throw your head into it.
Well, no, it was cool because it was 3D.
Yes.
However, nothing about it was fucking portable. The thing weighed like probably 10 pounds. It was heavy.
Yeah. It looked like some giant...
That piece of shit stand that they made with it broke every fucking 2 seconds. I think I changed like 4 of them.
Honestly, it looked like some sort of ocular like device used in the 60s. Like it did look very weird, and it was just clunky. And
I thought it was a cool concept. However, the system itself was very expensive for the time. I believe it was $199.
Yep.
Which back in that day was like fucking $400, which is expensive for what it is.
How many games did they have on it?
Not many. I mean, I had the game called Tellero Boxer. I think it came with Mario Tennis.
Yep.
And again, the proof of concept was great. The way it was a lot of fun to play. But I mean, I was like 10.
But this is where it comes
I lied
out
to you.
me.
I was older than that. But either way, it fucking really hurt my eyes. And there was no multiplayer whatsoever. And at that time, because there was no internet, I wanted to play with my friends.
I know. The one thing that, the one essence or sort of variation on virtual reality that I loved, and I still think is the best one today, is really a version of augmented reality, and that is, in essence, laser tag. I mean, laser tag.
Laser tag is a form of augmented reality, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly what everything VR wants to do nowadays. They want an environment where you're thinking you're in that battlefield. Yep. You have a gun that's not a gun.
Paintball is the same kind of thing, right?
No, same kind of thing. Although paintball is more reality because you're actually shooting something.
It's more analog versus digital.
Exactly.
I don't know if you heard about this. I think there's 1 or 2 different things like this in the U.S., but in Canada and Toronto here, we have I think it's called hardcore laser tag.
Yep.
Where it's laser tag. It's like Halo. Okay, you get like fragged and stuff, but when you get hit, you have the option of being electrocuted.
Yep.
Like electrically shocked.
Yep. To know and to feel it.
To know and to feel it, which is fucked up because you can actually increase the intensity. So if you're psycho and retarded and you really, for some reason, feel the need to hurt yourself,
or if you want to show off.
If you want to show off, that's pretty messed up, though. I think it's a pretty cool concept, but that's taking like real life VR a little bit out of the way.
To be honest, though, that really parallels itself to the idea of what paintball is. I mean, it's exactly what paintball does, only you're not using any ammunition. It's all virtual ammunition. Exactly. So it's actually cheaper and it's probably better. And I'll guarantee you, probably that shock hurts a little bit less than getting a full welt from a paintball.
I don't think so. But regardless, so to cap this episode off, we've talked about the early stages, like early stages of VR, with like 3D photos that you 3D things that you put your head into and see it back in the 1800s. You said things in like like what MIT was doing with Aspen, which is really fucking cool.
I mean, back in the day, it was revolutionary for them.
It was, of course, and we've also capped on light guns and Rob the Robot and our past experiences with VR. So quickly, within about a minute, we're gonna just talk about why VR failed. Because I mean, I don't know about you, but I haven't heard of fucking VR in like 10 years, and all of a sudden,
all right. One of the main reasons why I know why it failed: input devices were not where they needed to be.
Not at all.
There was reasons why we wanted all these things inside of VR that we like with laser tag that just cannot translate without the technology.
So the thing which I found about the old shit that I used to go to, like the one in New Jersey or the one at the theme parks, it was not one for one. I used to get motion sickness. I never get motion sickness, and we're going to explain about how they're trying to combat that with the new stuff in the next episode, or the last episode, one of them. And you know, it wasn't practical. It was expensive as fuck.
Well,
like for your own home system, the games were like fucking 2 minutes long because no one wanted to develop for them.
Yep. And I mean, one of the biggest flaws is, first we developed some visuals that needed a lot higher input devices to actually correlate to the real worlds that we're creating. Then, soon after that, maybe, you know, give it from 1995 to about 2005, we were creating input devices that greater surpassed our visual outputs, which were flat screens. Now, we're finally catching up, and I mean...
Curved screens.
The past has just been advancement, but it seems like the advancements have never been complementary. So I believe that one of the main reasons why it's failed is it's been always in the scope, but never in the main scope. So it's easily seen as a gimmick. It's easily seen as something which doesn't have the integrity that it's supposed to. And I think nowadays that they're just trying to change that.
Yep. So this is it for the past.
Yep.
Our next episode, episode 8, is going to be episode 8. Episode
6.
7. Well, sorry, 6, 7.
6 and 7.
I don't know what the fuck episode we're on. Okay, how about this? How about the next fucking episode?
He knows tech, not numbers.
Yeah, okay. That's it. Okay, I can't count for shit. In the next, in the next episode, we're gonna show you about the present. So, how VR has evolved from, you know, whatever the hell it was back in the 80s and early 90s to what it is today, to, you know, the Oculus Rift and everything else. And the last episode will be placed on the future, where we think it's going to be going. So this is it for this episode.
So thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot for listening. Check out our next episode tomorrow. Bye now.